3 seconds. That's all it took for Carolyn Drake to decide that Elijah Brandt didn't belong in the exclusive first-class lounge. His tailored charcoal suit, polished demeanor, and quiet confidence meant nothing to her. All she saw was his skin. Security, she whispered under her breath, eyes narrowing with years of suspicion disguised as professionalism. What she didn't see was the vast tech empire Elijah had built from scratch, or the billions that now quietly moved at his command. As security approached and began escorting him out, most of the travelers nearby buried their eyes in their phones or newspapers, pretending not to notice. All except one. A teenage airport intern named Malik Owens stared wide-eyed. He recognized Elijah Brandt instantly, the man whose innovations shaped half the systems running this airport. Malik's heart thudded as he watched one of the greatest minds of their era being treated like an intruder. Elijah's expression remained unreadable. He didn't argue. He didn't protest. He simply took out his phone and made a single call. Protocol links. Begin observation mode. With those 6 words, the fate of Virion Airlines was sealed. They thought they were ejecting an out-of-place passenger. What they had actually done was spark a reckoning with a man who had spent his entire life preparing for this very moment, when discrimination would finally come face-to-face with discipline, intelligence, and unstoppable strategy. The matte black Auden Royce sedan glided to a silent stop in front of Marlow International Airport's departure terminal. The chauffeur exited, briskly stepping around to open the rear door. Inside, Elijah Brandt straightened his cuffs, platinum, monogrammed, a personal gift when he closed his first billion-dollar acquisition. He reached for a slim leather portfolio and nodded once to his driver. "Will you be needing help with your luggage, Mr. Brandt?" the chauffeur asked, standing at a near-military posture. Elijah shook his head with a half-smile. "Just the carry-on, Marcus. I travel light these days. As you wish, sir." Elijah stepped onto the curb, the late morning light catching the sharp lines of his Lucian gray suit, custom-tailored, perfectly cut to his athletic frame. At 42, he moved with the kind of presence that drew attention without needing to raise his voice. "Will you need a pickup on your return, sir?" "I'll send the details once I land in Orion Bay," Elijah replied. Then, with a small smile, he added, "And Marcus, take the rest of the day off. That's an order." The chauffeur allowed himself a rare smile. "Much appreciated, sir." As Elijah walked through the sliding glass doors into the terminal, he felt that subtle shift in energy, the one that always seemed to stir when a black man stepped into spaces not traditionally made for him. There were the usual cues. A pair of businessmen scrolling their phones did a double take as he passed. A security guard near the entrance straightened up, suddenly alert. A woman clutched her handbag just a bit tighter as she brushed by. He noticed it all, like he always did. But his face remained still, calm, composed. These small moments had become so common in his life that they now formed a kind of dull background music. Irritating, yes. Surprising? Never. Elijah had long ago learned the cost of reacting. Reacting gave others control over his peace. The first-class check-in counter was empty, except for 2 airline staff casually chatting behind the desk. As Elijah approached, the younger of the 2, a woman whose name tag read Rena, offered him a reflexive smile. The older woman, Carolyn Drake, according to her badge, paused mid-sentence. Her eyes locked onto Elijah's face, scanning him with a look he had seen more times than he could count. "Good morning," Elijah said smoothly, sliding his ID and premium membership card across the counter. Virion Airlines to Orion Bay, 11:30 departure. Carolyn took the documents with a tight, forced smile that barely moved her lips. "And how are you today, sir?" That beat of hesitation before sir was short, but sharp, sharper than any blade. "I'm well, thank you," Elijah replied, his tone steady and respectful, but laced with the kind of authority that came from years of walking through rooms that didn't expect to welcome him. Carolyn tapped away at her keyboard, her fingers striking each key with more force than necessary. "Business or pleasure?" she asked, though her voice held no curiosity. "Business," Elijah answered. "I'm sure," she muttered, almost to herself. She glanced at his ID again, then back up at him, as if trying to confirm that this calm, composed man really was Elijah Brandt. She leaned slightly toward Rena and whispered something behind a hand. Rena's eyes flicked up in surprise before she quickly masked her expression. Elijah's hearing was sharp, trained over years of navigating boardrooms and backstabbing investors. He caught fragments of their exchange. "That's the tech guy. Probably just lucky money." She handed back his boarding pass with reluctant fingers. "Here you go, Mr. Brandt. First-class passengers can proceed to the premium security lane. Boarding begins at 10:45. "Thank you," he said, taking the pass without missing a beat, though he noticed how her gaze followed him long after he turned away. The TSA process that followed? Predictable. Elijah was randomly selected for additional screening. Again. He didn't react, even as he stood patiently for the pat-down, arms raised, face neutral. He had done this dance many times before. 20 minutes later, Elijah approached the Virion Airlines Premier Lounge. A new face greeted him, a young white man with tidy blonde hair and a bright, rehearsed smile. "Good morning, sir. May I see your boarding pass and ID?" Elijah reached into his coat pocket, retrieving the requested documents just as a familiar voice called out from behind the podium. "I'll handle this one, Reed," Carolyn Drake said, her voice just a little too quick, a little too firm. She moved beside the podium, slightly out of breath, as if she'd hurried to intercept him. Reed hesitated. "Of course, Ms. Drake," he said, stepping aside. Elijah handed his documents over once more, calm and unbothered. Carolyn examined them as if they were counterfeit bills. She flipped the boarding pass, turned it back, then studied the screen in front of her far longer than necessary. "Is there a problem?" Elijah asked, voice quiet but sharp with clarity. "Just following protocol, sir," Carolyn replied, the word "sir" now practically a sneer. "These are very exclusive tickets. We have to ensure all guests are where they're supposed to be." People nearby slowed their steps. The air changed, tension creeping in like a silent fog. "I assure you, the ticket is valid," Elijah said. Carolyn didn't look up. Looks like it might belong to someone else, or perhaps it was purchased by an employer? The implication hung there, heavy and offensive. Off to the side, an older man in a golf shirt chuckled loudly. Maybe he's lost. "Coach is that way," he said, pointing toward the general terminal with a smirk. Carolyn said nothing. She didn't correct him. Instead, she straightened up. "I'm going to need additional verification," she said crisply. Breathless from her brisk stride across the terminal, Carolyn Drake appeared behind the podium like a storm cloud. "I'll handle this one, Reed," she said with a dismissive nod, her tone brooking no debate. Reed hesitated, confused, but obeyed. "Of course, Miss Drake." Elijah Brandt handed over his ID and boarding pass once more, his posture composed, his presence unwavering. Carolyn took her time. She scrutinized the boarding pass as if she expected it to disintegrate in her hands, flipping it over, squinting at the print, looking for any excuse to declare it invalid. "Is there a problem?" Elijah asked, his voice smooth but edged with quiet steel. "Just doing my job, sir," she replied, the word "sir" landing like an insult rather than a courtesy. Carolyn tapped at the terminal, her brows furrowed as if the ticket's very existence offended her. "This first-class seat," she began, pausing for emphasis, "seems unusual." Elijah lifted a brow. "Unusual? How so?" "Well, these seats are incredibly expensive," she said, her eyes narrowing, "and we must ensure all guests are in their correct places." Around them, the air tightened. A few travelers slowed their steps, drawn by the rising tension. Elijah felt the gaze of strangers, their doubts, assumptions, and silent judgments clinging to him like humidity. "My ticket is valid," Elijah stated firmly, his voice still calm but no longer soft. "Check again." Carolyn didn't flinch. She stared at the screen, then back at Elijah. "This ticket, it's probably not yours." She lifted her eyes to meet his, her expression accusatory. "Did you find it, sir? Or perhaps someone from your company purchased it on your behalf?" The words dropped like stones, the implication unmistakable. A few feet away, a man in a golf polo and khakis let out a smug laugh. "Maybe he's lost," the man said, loud enough for nearby ears. "Coach is that way." He pointed behind Elijah without shame. Carolyn didn't correct him. If anything, she stood a little straighter, emboldened. "I'm going to need additional verification," she said coolly. Without a word, Elijah reached into his wallet and retrieved something that spoke louder than any retort. A matte black Orion Reserve card, the kind whispered about in financial circles. It gleamed faintly under the terminal lights as he held it out. "Will this help confirm my identity?" he asked, voice neutral, unshaken. Carolyn's eyes widened just slightly at the sight, but she quickly composed herself. "Anyone could have one of those," she replied. "I'm calling security." She turned away and lifted the phone, her back to him as she dialed. Elijah didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He simply stepped aside, straightened his suit jacket, and waited. He'd played this scene before, too many times, and he knew exactly how it ended, at least for them. For him, this time would be different. Within minutes, a security officer approached, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a commanding presence and salt-and-pepper hair. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had once served, probably military. The brass nameplate on his chest read, "Desmond Hale." "What seems to be the issue here?" Desmond asked, his voice calm but firm. "This gentleman," Carolyn began, putting unnecessary emphasis on the word again, "is trying to enter the first-class lounge using what I believe is fraudulent documentation." Desmond turned toward Elijah and, for a brief moment, recognition flashed in his eyes. But he masked it quickly. "Sir," he said politely, "may I see your identification and boarding pass?" Elijah handed them over without hesitation. Desmond reviewed them carefully, scanning the barcodes and matching the name against the manifest. "Ms. Drake," he said evenly, "everything appears to be in perfect order. Mr. Brandt's credentials are valid." Carolyn's jaw tensed. "But he doesn't." She caught herself. "I mean, it looks suspicious." The system flagged. The system flagged nothing. Desmond cut in, voice clipped. "There are no alerts for this passenger." "I still think he should be removed from the lounge," Carolyn insisted, "just as a precaution. We can't be too careful these days." Desmond hesitated. The awkward silence between them thickened. He didn't agree with her, but protocol left him little room to outright refuse. His professionalism pulled him in one direction, his ethics tugged the other way. Finally, he turned to Elijah. "Sir, I apologize," he said, "but would you mind accompanying me while we sort this out? It's just procedure." Elijah nodded once, his face unreadable. Of course. As Desmond escorted him away, Elijah noticed a young black intern in a Virion Airlines uniform standing nearby. His name tag read Malik Owens, and his expression was frozen in disbelief. His thumbs moved furiously over his phone as he typed something out. Elijah walked with quiet dignity, every step a defiance. Once they were out of earshot of the lounge, Elijah reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. "This is Brant," he said quietly. "Protocol links. Full spectrum engagement. Begin observation mode." He ended the call and slipped the phone away just as Desmond opened the door to the security office. "Mr. Brant, Desmond began, clearly uncomfortable. "It's all right, Mr. Hale," Elijah interrupted gently. "I know you're just doing your job." Desmond looked pained. "For what it's worth, sir, I recognize you. And this shouldn't be happening." Elijah offered a small nod. He didn't need Desmond's apology. He needed the system to change. He had spent a lifetime preparing for moments like this, not to win arguments, but to win wars. Meanwhile, back in the terminal, Malik Owens was tapping furiously on his phone. He wasn't just texting, he was warning. To Noah Tran, IT department. "Bro, they just messed with Elijah Brant. The Elijah Brant. They pulled him out like he was some random guy trying to sneak into first class. You know how much of our back end runs on his company's systems? We're so screwed." The IT break room was usually quiet around this time, microwaves humming, keyboards clicking, a stale pot of coffee growing colder by the hour. But when Noah Tran read the message on his phone, he choked on his drink mid-sip. He didn't even finish reading before calling Malik Owens. "Are you joking right now?" Noah demanded as soon as Malik picked up. "Elijah Brant? The Elijah Brant?" "Dead serious," Malik hissed, ducking behind a nearby column to stay out of sight. "I watched it happen. Carolyn Drake and security just dragged him out of the first-class lounge like he was trying to sneak in or something." Noah's voice shot up an octave. "Do you have any idea who that man is? His AI architecture powers half the systems in this airport. The Ether Core protocols Virion uses, they're his. Hell, even the Pentagon uses his defense framework." "I know who he is," Malik whispered. "My senior thesis at Avery Tech was built around his early predictive models. He's a damn legend." Noah's voice dropped to a near whisper. "And they treated him like he'd stolen a bag of peanuts from the snack cart." Both young men went silent for a moment, the weight of what they'd just witnessed settling in. Elijah Brant, the genius behind half the country's secure systems, had just been racially profiled like an imposter in a space he helped make possible. But long before Elijah built the tools that ran modern cities, before the billions in boardrooms, he was just a quiet kid with a second-hand notebook and a mind that didn't match his surroundings. It was 28 years earlier. 8-year-old Elijah sat on the cracked concrete steps of Hollow Creek Children's Home, a spiral-bound notebook gripped tightly in his lap. The pages were filled with rows of numbers, symbols, and complex shapes only a handful of adults might understand. Beside him, his social worker, Miss Lenora Fields, lowered herself gently onto the step. "Elijah." "She's not coming today," Lenora said softly. Elijah didn't respond. He just kept writing. Your aunt. Something came up again. I'm really sorry. He nodded, not looking up. By now, it barely registered. His aunt, the last living relative after his parents were killed in a highway crash 2 years before, had missed too many promises to count. It's okay, he said. I have to finish this algorithm anyway. Lenora glanced down at the notebook. What are you working on? It's a pattern detector, Elijah explained, his face serious beyond his years. If you can understand the pattern, you can see what's coming. And if you can see what's coming, maybe you can stop the bad stuff. Her heart cracked a little at his words. It made too much sense for a child who had seen his world implode before he even lost his baby teeth. You're something special, Elijah, Lenora said gently. Someday, people are going to know your name. By the time he was 14, Elijah had been placed in 4 different foster homes. He was too quiet, too smart, too black for the mostly white suburban schools he ended up in. Racial slurs, isolation, and the cold sting of envy followed him from classroom to cafeteria. He stopped speaking unless necessary. He kept his notebooks hidden. He studied the world with the precision of someone preparing for war. At Kenswick High, his math teacher, Mr. Halford, noticed something unusual. Elijah was breezing through advanced calculus while his peers struggled to factor polynomials. After class one day, Halford pulled him aside. You're wasting away in this room, Elijah, he said. You need something more challenging. Elijah shrugged. I challenge myself. Curious, Halford raised an eyebrow. With what? Elijah hesitated, then unzipped his backpack and pulled out a thick black notebook. He opened it and showed a section of handwritten code, sketched out flowcharts and market pattern graphs. Halford's eyes widened with each turn of the page. This is graduate-level modeling. What are you building? A predictive engine, Elijah said softly. For financial markets. Just a hobby. A hobby? Halford stared at the boy in disbelief. Elijah, this is extraordinary. For the first time in months, Elijah allowed himself a small, crooked smile. At 17, he was juggling 3 jobs. Mornings behind the counter at a coffee shop, evenings shelving books at the local library, and weekends washing dishes at a greasy diner off Route 28. Every dollar went into upgrading the second-hand computer tower in his foster home bedroom. He'd built it from scraps, refurbished parts bought online, a hand-me-down monitor, and a lot of stubbornness. One night, his foster father, Ron Wallace, passed by Elijah's room and noticed the glow from under the door. It was nearly 3 a.m. Ron knocked lightly and stepped in. You're gonna burn out at this rate, kid. I'm okay, Elijah mumbled, not taking his eyes off the screen. What's got you up this late? Elijah hesitated. Ron wasn't a bad man. Not warm exactly, but decent. He didn't shout. He didn't pry. He gave space. I'm finishing the prototype, Elijah finally said. I need it working before I send out my MIT scholarship app. Ron moved closer, squinting at the code. What does it do? It uses climate data and crop cycles to predict global food shortages, Elijah explained. If aid groups had warning, they could act faster, save more lives. Ron stared for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. You're something else. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Get some sleep. Even the smart ones need it. That night, Elijah took the advice. Just 3 hours, but it was something. When he returned from school the next afternoon, Ron was waiting at the kitchen table, envelope in hand. This came for you, express mail. Elijah opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a letter bearing the Newton Institute of Technology's seal. He had been accepted. Not just accepted. A full scholarship. That weekend, Ron grilled burgers and bought a single candle to stick into a store-bought cake. It was the first celebration anyone had ever held in Elijah's honor. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of official letterhead, bearing the crimson seal of the Newton Institute of Technology. Elijah Brandt read it 3 times before the weight of the words hit him. A full scholarship. Tuition, room, board, covered. The years of grinding late into the night, the sacrifices, the endless code and cold takeout, all of it had paid off. That weekend, Ron Wallace and his wife bought a cake from the corner grocery store and called it a party. It was small, a few balloons, some paper plates, but it was the first time anyone had celebrated Elijah for something he built. It should have been the beginning of a fairy tale ending. It wasn't. 2 years later, 19-year-old Elijah sat stiffly in a too-clean conference room, deep in downtown Stratford, Massachusetts. Across from him sat 3 white men in tailored suits that probably cost more than the first 3 laptops he'd ever owned combined. Their smiles were too wide. Their eyes were calculating. "Your algorithm is very impressive, Mr. Brandt," said Gregory Langston, the silver-haired venture capitalist seated at the center. "A little raw in places, but the potential is undeniable." "Thank you," Elijah replied, voice steady despite the unease threading through his chest. He had spent the last 2 years refining his predictive model to track and forecast global food shortages. It wasn't just code. It was meant to save lives. Langston's associate, Elliot Sharp, leaned forward and slid a slim envelope across the polished table. "We're prepared to offer $50,000 for the IP," he said. His business card sat beside the envelope like a signature waiting to be claimed. Elijah blinked. 50,000? "That's right," Langston said, chuckling like Elijah had just told a naive joke. "You're a sophomore with no product, no funding, no track record. We're assuming all the risk. I built it. I tested it." "It works," Elijah said firmly. "The Global Relief Fund has already expressed interest in deploying it next year." Langston leaned back in his chair, unbothered. "We understand your passion, Elijah, but this is how business works. We have the networks, the infrastructure. Without us, this model stays on your hard drive." Elijah's eyes narrowed. "You want to strip out the humanitarian features and sell it to hedge funds, don't you?" The third man, Marcus Vale, sighed, clearly impatient. "Let's be practical. You're a second-year student from nowhere. No investors, no connections, no legacy. What we're offering is generous." Elijah stood. His hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. From conviction. "I appreciate your time," he said coolly, "but I'm not selling my vision to the highest bidder just so it can become a tool for greed." Langston's voice hardened. "Don't be foolish. You walk away, we'll develop something similar in-house. You'll get nothing, not even a footnote. I'll take my chances." He picked up his prototype, tucked the envelope back into their hands, and walked out. 6 months later, Langston's firm released their own version of the model. It was stripped of its humanitarian purpose and optimized for speculative trading. The UI looked eerily familiar. They made millions. Elijah got nothing, not even credit. It was his first real betrayal, but not his last. It taught him a lesson that would never leave him. In the world of power, ownership was everything, and right now he had none. But one day he would. Back at Marlow International Airport, Malik's text to Noah wasn't the only message flying through employee phones. Rumors spread fast, like a dropped match on dry brush. Elijah Brandt is in the security office. They pulled him. The Brandt? From Ether Core? We're finished. Inside the security office, Desmond Hale went through Elijah's documents again, a frown tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, Mr. Brandt," he said, formality covering discomfort. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding." Elijah stayed calm. "Is it, though?" Desmond looked up. Their eyes met, just for a second. And in that second, truth passed between them. "A misunderstanding suggests this wasn't deliberate," Elijah continued. "What I experienced didn't feel accidental." Desmond said nothing at first. He'd worked in airport security for 20 years, following a career in the military. He'd seen too much, watched as the phrase random screening became code for black man in a suit. He'd seen travelers like Elijah singled out, again and again, for simply not fitting the image of first class. "I can't comment on that, sir," Desmond said finally. "You don't have to," Elijah replied. "Your silence says enough." Desmond cleared his throat. "You're free to go. I'll escort you back to the lounge." "That won't be necessary," Elijah said. "My flight's boarding soon." Just as he stepped into the corridor, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He opened the message. "Mr. Brandt, this is Malik Owens, Virion intern. What happened to you was wrong. A lot of us here respect you greatly." Elijah paused, considering his response, then typed back, "Stay observant. Truth reveals itself to the patient." Outside the terminal, a sleek black SUV idled by the curb, its windows tinted to obsidian. Behind the wheel sat Nia Bennett, head of global security for Brandt Systems. At 45, Nia was a fortress of quiet authority, close-cropped hair, a mind sharp as any blade, and eyes that missed nothing. Before Elijah personally recruited her, she'd served as a top-level intelligence strategist for the agency. Her phone buzzed. She answered without hesitation. "Bennett, it's me," came Elijah's voice, calm, controlled, but with a pulse beneath it. "Protocol Links is active." Nia's eyes sharpened. "Understood. Assets are already in motion. I'll begin positioning. I'm boarding soon," he added. "Intel on Virion looks worse than expected," Nia said, glancing at her secured tablet. "Ties to multiple offshore accounts, Cayman and Lucerne. And their CEO, Everett Langford? He's deep in bed with the Senate Transport Committee, golf buddies with half the board. Vulnerabilities? Plenty," she replied. "Cyber defenses are outdated. HR culture is toxic. 16 settlements in 5 years, all NDA'd. Safety reports are massaged, let's say." Elijah's voice remained flat. "They're rotten from the core." Nya nodded, though he couldn't see her. "What's the move?" she asked. There was a pause on the line. "They tried to shame me out of a space I rightfully belonged in," Elijah said, "because they saw my skin and made assumptions." Naya's voice softened slightly. "So, this is personal." "It's always been personal," Elijah said. "But it's not about revenge. It's about justice." "Exactly. Toxic culture. 18 harassment settlements in the last 5 years, buried. And their safety record?" Nia Bennett swiped through her encrypted tablet. "It's maintained through legal intimidation and quiet settlements. Nothing clean, nothing honest." "Perfect," Elijah Brandt said. His voice was calm, but cold enough to cut through steel. "They're rotten from the inside." Nia lowered the tablet. "What's the play, Elijah?" Her tone dropped the formality they used in meetings. This was war council mode now, just the two of them, as it had always been in their most high-stakes operations. He paused. They humiliated me because they thought I was weak, disposable, because of my skin, because of who they assumed I was. He turned to face the tinted window of the jet, watching the terminal recede in the distance. This isn't revenge, Naya. It's accountability. It's consequence. Naya nodded slowly. These systems survive because no one powerful enough ever stops them. Well, Elijah replied, they're about to meet someone who can. She allowed herself a grim smile. And you've got more resources than they can imagine. Then prepare full-spectrum engagement, Elijah said. I want every buried report, every covered-up violation, every corrupt executive exposed, one skeleton at a time. Naya raised an eyebrow. Even Carolyn Drake? Elijah didn't blink. No one's collateral damage. Everyone made a choice. Across town, at Virion Airlines' corporate headquarters in downtown Stratford, CEO Everett Langford sipped his 20-year-old whiskey, his golf bag still resting near the door from his morning tea time with Senator Reed Talbot, chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. Great news, Langford said to his CFO, Gavin Rhodes, leaning back in his leather chair. The new safety regulations are being pushed off for further review. That saves us what? $30 million in upgrades? Gavin raised an eyebrow. At least, he muttered. Talbot's good for something after all. Langford chuckled. He knows how the world works. Business before bureaucracy. The intercom on his desk buzzed. Mr. Langford, we have a developing situation at Marlowe International. PR thinks you need to be briefed. Langford sighed. Can't they handle it? They say it's escalating. He jabbed the button. Put them through. A nervous voice came over the line. Sir, a high-profile passenger was removed from our first-class lounge this morning. Elijah Brandt. Langford sat up straighter. Brandt. Why does that name sound familiar? He's the founder of Brandt Systems, the rep explained quickly. Our AI infrastructure partner, the one whose company built the scheduling and cybersecurity layers used in most major airports. Oh, right, the tech guy. Langford waved a hand. Black fellow, right? Yes, sir. Langford leaned back again. Standard playbook. Statement about our commitment to inclusion, isolated incident, doesn't reflect our values. You know the drill. Sir, the PR rep pressed, this one's different. Brandt's extremely influential. His company basically keeps our back end operational. Then blame the employee, Langford snapped. Say she acted out of line. The media will move on by tomorrow. Of course, sir, the rep said, clearly unconvinced. Langford ended the call and turned to Gavin. You see what I deal with? One moment of outrage and everyone loses their minds. Gavin didn't respond. Langford narrowed his eyes. What? Brandt Systems, Gavin said carefully, designed the new AI that's being tested for national air traffic control. They're kind of a big deal. Langford shrugged. Tech companies are all the same. Too much money. Not enough real-world sense. Back at Marlowe International, Rena, the younger gate agent, found Carolyn Drake in the break room nursing a cup of stale coffee. Sandra, Rena said softly, using her real first name this time instead of just Ms. Drake. What happened earlier? With that passenger, it was wrong. Carolyn looked up, her eyes narrowing. Excuse me? He had every right to be in the lounge. His credentials were valid. You know that. I was following protocol. Carolyn replied sharply. He seemed suspicious. How? Rena pushed. Because he was black? He was dressed better than half the passengers in first class. Carolyn's expression hardened. Men like that always play the victim, always think they're owed something. He wasn't asking for special treatment, Rena said. He just wanted the same treatment anyone else would get. You're too young to understand, Carolyn snapped. I've done this job for 20 years. I know trouble when I see it. Rena stared at her in disbelief. That's the problem, isn't it? You see trouble when there isn't any. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You know who that was, don't you? Carolyn didn't answer. That was Elijah Brandt, Rena said, the man whose company your security system depends on, the man who's worth billions. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed Carolyn's face. The name means nothing to me, she said stubbornly. Maybe it should, Rena replied, because I guarantee it means something to our board. As Elijah's jet prepared for takeoff, a secure message came through on his tablet. Nia, Phase 1 complete. Awaiting authorization. Elijah looked out the window at the Virion jet parked across the tarmac, the gleaming logo a mask over decades of rot. He typed back a single word. Begin. The first crack had formed, and they would break it wide open, one piece at a time. The footage had gone viral by the time Elijah Brandt's plane landed. Shaky cell phone video captured the entire exchange. Carolyn Drake's cutting tone, her refusal to accept valid credentials, and Elijah's quiet dignity as he was led away by security. One tweet read, "This is what happens when you dare to fly first class while black." It was shared over 70,000 times in 4 hours. Another post placed Carolyn's professional headshot side by side with a still of her confrontation with Elijah, her smile in the portrait a stark contrast to the sneer frozen on video. By the time Elijah slid into the back seat of his waiting car, the story had made national headlines. A Stratford Now anchor, her voice somber, announced, "Breaking news. Tech billionaire and artificial intelligence innovator Elijah Brandt was allegedly denied access to a first-class lounge at Marlow International despite valid credentials. Virion Airlines is now facing allegations of racial profiling after the incident was caught on video by multiple witnesses." Elijah watched the news with little visible reaction as his driver navigated the downtown streets of San Francisco. His phone buzzed. "Bennett," said a familiar voice as he answered. Nia Bennett didn't waste time. The news cycle's taken it, trending in your favor. Social sentiment is swinging. Virion's PR team is flailing. Their damage control is weak, and our first digital insert? Completed. We're monitoring everything now. "Good," Elijah said simply. "Keep it up." Within hours, Virion Airlines posted their official response. A statement, polished and posted to every social media platform, read, "Virion Airlines is deeply committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion at every level of our operations." The recent incident involving Mr. Brandt appears to be an isolated occurrence involving a single employee who failed to adhere to established company protocol. We are investigating the matter thoroughly and will take appropriate action. We sincerely apologize to Mr. Brandt and to all of our valued passengers. At Virion's executive headquarters, Everett Langford read the statement from his tablet, unimpressed. "There," he said, tossing it aside on the conference table. "Crisis managed." His crisis management team sat in tense silence. Teresa Quinn, Virion's chief communications officer, pressed her lips together. "Sir, with respect, this isn't going away. Mr. Brandt is one of the most respected minds in tech. and he has serious influence. Langford rolled his eyes. It's a PR bump, Teresa. We've had worse. People forget. Blaming the employee and issuing a boilerplate apology won't be enough. She pushed gently. We should consider contacting Mr. Brandt directly. Offer something meaningful. Langford leaned forward, irritation bubbling under his voice. Meaningful? For what? A 5-minute inconvenience? He still made his flight, didn't he? This isn't the first time we've faced accusations of discrimination, Teresa said carefully. Langford cut her off, and they've all gone away after a quiet settlement. Toss legal a few dollars and everyone moves on. Gavin Rhodes, the CFO, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Langford stood abruptly. Meeting adjourned. I've got a charity gala tonight. Handle it. Keep it cheap. The team slowly filed out. Teresa hung back, catching Gavin near the exit. I don't like this, she whispered. It feels different. Gavin nodded. It is, but when Langford locks in, there's no changing him. He was about to say more when his phone buzzed. Security, from the airport. Meanwhile, Carolyn Drake strode through the employee lounge at Marlowe like a celebrity. Several fellow gate agents had seen the footage and were already buzzing about it. I was just doing my job, she said with an air of smugness. Protecting our premium spaces. You never know what kind of people try to sneak in these days. Across the room, Rena leaned against the wall, arms crossed. That's not what happened, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. Carolyn turned to her. Excuse me? You targeted him. You left your post just to intercept him at the lounge. The lounge fell quiet. Several agents nearby stopped pretending to eat their snacks. Carolyn's smile faltered, her voice growing cold. Be very careful, Rena. Making accusations like that about a senior colleague can affect your career here. Before Rena could respond, their supervisor entered the lounge, expression tight. Drake. My office. Now. Carolyn looked around, flustered. What's this about, Jeff? Now, he said, without elaborating. As she followed him out, her phone buzzed. A message from Virion HR. Reminder. All employee social media accounts are subject to review under updated policy. Refrain from posting or commenting on ongoing matters involving Virion Airlines. Her heart skipped. The empire she thought protected her was shifting beneath her feet. Across the country, Virion systems began glitching. Travelers nationwide were suddenly receiving confusing notifications. Flight schedules vanished from the app only to reappear hours later. Premium customers found themselves reassigned to economy. Transactions doubled. Booking platforms froze. Inside Virion's IT control center in Dallas, alarms pinged and dashboards lit up red. We've got cascading errors, one engineer called out, fingers flying across the keyboard. I thought we patched those modules last week, his lead asked. We did. That's what's weird. It's not a bug. It's behaving more like... The engineer stopped, his voice faltering. More like what? Like the system's fighting itself. The code's clean, but it's responding like it's under pressure. Targeted pressure. Another alert popped up. Then another. The VIP reservation system is prioritizing wrong queue levels. And our auto-response emails, they're misfiring. Could this be an attack? The engineer hesitated. Maybe, but it doesn't look like a breach. No access logs, no intrusion alerts. Then what the hell is it? He stared at the screen, mouth dry. It's almost like someone built this from the inside. Credit card transactions failed without warning. Others duplicated, causing passengers to be billed 2 or 3 times for the same seat. Flights vanished from Virion's system, only to return with altered schedules or mismatched passenger manifests. Across the country, booking agents scrambled as customers flooded support lines with complaints. At Virion's Data Operations Center in Dallas, red alerts stacked like dominoes on every dashboard. "It's like the system is turning against itself," muttered Trevor Leung, lead systems engineer, to his increasingly irate director. "I thought we rolled out patches for this kind of error last week?" The director barked. "We did," Trevor said, pushing away from his console in frustration. "That's what's bizarre. Every time we fix one issue, 3 more pop up in different parts of the infrastructure." Could it be a hack? Trevor hesitated. Possibly. But there's no breach signature. Security protocols are intact. No external access points. No anomalies in our firewall logs. So, what is it? He rubbed his temples, then leaned forward and pulled up a user heat map. "The disruptions aren't random," he said slowly. "They're focused, specific." The director stepped closer. "Specific how?" "They're targeting our highest value customers, first-class accounts, international VIP routes, corporate partners. It's too intentional to be coincidence." In a penthouse suite overlooking downtown San Francisco, Elijah Brandt sat before a wall of glass, the skyline reflected faintly on the surface of his monitor. His eyes flicked between multiple data streams, server response rates, back-end traffic, and live feedback feeds. On a secure line, Nia Bennett's voice came through. "Operation Mirror is active," she reported. "Digital insertion is stable. The code's subtle, structured to look like internal friction. Enough to scramble their ecosystem without triggering panic-level lockdowns." Elijah nodded. "Collateral? Minimal. We're focused on the systems that protect their profits, not their passengers." "Good. What about their communications? Our people have already flagged dozens of vulnerabilities in Virion's executive messaging network. We're compiling data now. Inter-office messages, encrypted memos, private emails. Langford and his circle are exposed." "And human assets?" Elijah asked. "Malik Owens has been more useful than we anticipated," Nia said. "He's routed us into multiple back-end exchanges between departments. We've identified other employees at Virion who might be willing to speak out, quiet dissenters stuck under a toxic ceiling." Elijah leaned back in his chair, tapping the side of his glass. "And Drake?" he asked. Nia's tone darkened. "She's got a trail. HR has a file on her. Dozens of complaints over the years, all quietly handled. Her behavior toward passengers of color, especially those in premium classes, follows a very clear pattern. And the others in that system? Some, like Desmond Hale, your escort, seem caught between duty and morality. He's ex-Air Force, 20 years in security, clean record. You could call him decent, ethical even, but trapped inside the machinery." Elijah nodded slowly. "Reach out to him, discreetly. I want to know where he stands." Back at Marlowe International, Malik Owens scanned the departures board while trying to keep his hands from trembling. His phone buzzed. "Noah, our boss is freaking out. Something's wrong with the systems. Could this be related to yesterday?" Malik glanced over his shoulder, then ducked into a staff corridor before replying. "Malik, maybe. I'll keep an eye on it." A few terminals away, Desmond Hale sat alone in his office, reviewing security camera footage. He'd pulled the recording of Elijah's encounter with Drake for personal reflection, but now he was replaying it for the 5th time. It was worse than he remembered. Drake's tone, her expression, the unnecessary escalation, the way she looked at Elijah, not like a passenger, but like a threat. The phone on his desk rang. "Hale," he answered automatically. A measured, clear female voice came through. "Mr. Hale, this is Nia Bennett, head of global security for Brandt Systems. I'd like to speak with you privately." Desmond stiffened. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important. What matters is that we have a mutual acquaintance, Elijah Brandt." Desmond glanced around the empty office and lowered his voice. "What's this about?" "It's about justice," Nia replied, "and choices." Desmond stayed quiet. "Elijah noticed your professionalism yesterday. He appreciated your restraint, your judgment. You were placed in a difficult position, but you chose calm. That matters. I was just doing my job," Desmond said firmly. "Yes," Nia acknowledged. "But whose job, Mr. Hale? Company protocol or complicity?" Desmond's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Perhaps not," she said gently, "but you knew it was wrong. I can hear it in your voice even now." He didn't answer for several long moments. Finally, "What does Mr. Brandt want from me?" "Nothing you aren't already willing to give," Nia said. "Just the truth, when the time comes." The line went dead. Desmond sat frozen for several minutes, staring at the video still paused on his screen. Carolyn's face twisted with entitlement. Elijah standing firm, composed. How many times had he watched scenes like this play out? How many times had he said nothing? Later that evening, in a private dining room at a quiet bistro in the city, Elijah sat across from a woman he'd once called his greatest mentor. Selena Price, silver-streaked hair pulled into a low bun, still exuded the air of a pioneer. One of the first black women to run a tech firm before the industry had even begun to reckon with its inequalities, she'd built a legacy before Elijah had written his first line of code. "I saw the footage," she said as they sat. "It reminded me of how far we've come, and how far we haven't." Elijah gave a faint nod. "Some things don't change, but some do," Selena said, studying him. 20 years ago you would have had no platform, no leverage. Now you have all of it." "I do," Elijah said, "and I plan to use it." Selena sipped her wine thoughtfully. "I taught you to be patient for a reason. The long game always wins. I'm not being reckless." "Are you sure?" she asked, not unkindly, "because this feels personal." "It is," Elijah admitted, "but it's also structural, systemic. Langford didn't just insult me. He exposed the rot they've been covering for years. And you want to tear it all down?" He shook his head. "No, I want to shine light on every inch of it. Let the world decide what should fall." "I'm not acting out of impulse," Elijah Brandt said softly, "but yes, it's personal." He paused, meeting Selena Price's steady gaze. "But it's also bigger than me," he continued. "Virion Airlines has created a culture that rewards discrimination while preaching diversity. They've built a mask over a decaying structure. Financially, ethically, operationally, they're hollow." Selena tilted her head. "And you're planning to play what role in this? Judge, jury, executioner?" Elijah didn't flinch. "None of the above. Just the mirror. I won't destroy them. I'll make them visible." "And then?" she asked. "That's up to the public, the regulators, the markets." Selena studied him for a long moment. "You've thought this through." "You taught me to," Elijah replied. She gave a faint smile. Then remember what else I taught you. True power isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. Elijah finished. I haven't forgotten. Across the country, Virion systems continued to crumble. Travelers vented online in real time, canceled flights, vanished reservations, duplicate charges, customer service lines flooded and failing. The hashtags Yo Virion Chaos and Joe Fly While Black began trending together, exploding across TikTok, X, and Reddit. In the Dallas IT war room, Director Shaw slammed his fist on the table, veins bulging in his neck. How is this still happening? We've patched every known vulnerability, sir, said a junior analyst, clearly rattled. Director Shaw wheeled on her. Then explain it. The analyst swallowed hard. There's a pattern. The system failures began just after the incident with Elijah Brandt. Shaw's glare intensified. Coincidence? I don't think so, she said quickly. Brandt Systems built the backbone of our scheduling and booking infrastructure 3 years ago. What if... She hesitated. What if there's a back door we didn't know about? Silence fell across the room like a dropped curtain. That's impossible, Shaw snapped. But there was no conviction in his voice now. Unless it was hidden by design, the analyst added, voice quiet but firm, meant to stay dormant until it was needed. In a secure command center just outside San Francisco, Nia Bennett stood at the head of a glass-walled conference room, surrounded by cybersecurity experts and forensic analysts. Phase 2 begins now, she said. Dozens of hands moved at once across keyboards. Focus on internal communications, emails, texts, meeting memos, Nia instructed. Flag anything tied to discriminatory practices, regulatory avoidance, or suppressed safety records. One of her analysts looked up, eyes wide. Ma'am, we found something. Langford has been using an off-books email server, communications that never pass through official channels. Nia's eyes narrowed. Can we get in? Already inside, the analyst confirmed. And what we're seeing? It's more than questionable. It's incriminating. Back at Marlowe International, Malik Owens was ending his shift when he overheard 2 managers speaking in hushed tones near the break room. They want someone to take the fall, one muttered. Board's leaning on Langford hard. Who are they going after? The other asked. Security lead. Hale. They're saying he should have diffused the situation, not followed protocol. Malik froze behind a pamphlet display, heart racing. That's garbage, the second manager hissed. Hale didn't escalate anything. Drake caused the whole scene. Too risky, came the reply. Going after Drake admits direct discrimination. Easier to paint it as a security overreaction. The moment they walked away, Malik grabbed his phone. 2. Noah. They're setting Hale up. Board wants a scapegoat. Can you confirm? Minutes later, his phone buzzed. Noah. Confirmed. Saw the draft. He's being suspended pending internal review. That same night, across every Virion employee's computer screen, a single message appeared. This is only the beginning. It disappeared just as quickly as it arrived. The break room buzzed with confusion and fear. Staff whispered. Executives panicked. In the penthouse of Virion's Atlanta headquarters, Everett Langford paced furiously, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it takes, he barked. Fix this. Contain it. Get me Graham Voss. Graham Voss was a name known in every boardroom but spoken in whispers. A crisis fixer, ruthless, efficient, expensive. He didn't spin the story. He buried it. 3 hours later, Voss walked into Langford's office without knocking. He was lean, sharp-suited, with gray-streaked hair and cold eyes that never blinked longer than necessary. He tossed a tablet onto Langford's desk. "This," he said without preamble, "is worse than you led me to believe." Langford scanned the data. 12% down since the market opened. Try 15 by tomorrow if this continues. Langford sank into his chair. "Can you fix it?" "I can manage it," Voss corrected. "But I'll need full control. Comms, legal, personnel access, internal security." Langford waved his hand. "Whatever you need. Just stop the bleeding." "First," Voss said, "we identify and isolate internal threats. Anyone showing signs of disloyalty, sympathy for Brandt, or a tendency to leak." "You think we have moles?" Voss gave a small, cold smile. "In a storm like this, every company does." "You think we've got a leak?" Graham Voss asked, voice low, his smile thinner than a blade. "I think we have several," Everett Langford muttered, pacing by the window. Voss's gaze sharpened. "In a crisis, someone always talks. Fear creates cracks. Cracks expose the weak." The next morning, Malik Owens arrived at Marlowe International to find the atmosphere suffocating. Security officers lined every entrance. Their presence wasn't reassuring. It was a warning. As he stepped toward the employee gate, a guard intercepted him. "Malik Owens?" He froze. "Yeah? Come with me." They led him through a side corridor, then into a dim, windowless conference room where Graham Voss waited alone, reviewing a slim folder. "Mr. Owens," Voss said without looking up, "please, sit." Malik stayed standing. "What is this?" Voss finally lifted his eyes. "Your messages with Noah Chin, your interest in the Elijah Brandt situation, your sudden access to employee discussion threads you were never authorized to view." Malik's mouth went dry. Don't insult us," Voss interrupted sharply. "We've reviewed your communications, location history, and internal access logs. I know what you're doing." He closed the folder and folded his hands. "So, here are your options." Malik's chest rose and fell faster. 1. You're fired. Immediately. Blacklisted from the industry. We pursue legal action for breach of confidentiality and attempted corporate sabotage. He let the weight of it settle. Or 2. You tell me everything. Every contact, every leak. And in return, you keep your job. With a promotion. Reporting directly to me. Malik swallowed hard, but before he could respond, Voss slid the folder across the table. "Choose wisely." Elsewhere in the terminal, Desmond Hale sat silently across from a sharp-eyed woman in a tailored gray suit. Her visitor badge read Trina Vance. She didn't waste time. Your access card was used to review security footage of the Brandt incident. Repeatedly. After hours. She tapped a page in the file before her. You also received a call from Nia Bennett, Brandt Systems Head of Security, and your personnel file shows multiple complaints filed by you about racial profiling and unethical procedures over the last 2 years. Desmond remained composed. "I did nothing wrong." "No," Trina replied, "but you're a liability." She leaned forward. "You could also be an asset. Help us understand what Brandt is planning, what Miss Bennett asked of you." Desmond shook his head calmly. "I don't know anything." "Then," she said flatly, "you're of no use to us." Across the city, in a high-rise co-working space, Nia Bennett sat across from Helen Vance, COO of Virion Airlines. On paper, it was a casual meeting between two professionals. In reality, it was anything but. "This is irregular," Helen said, voice barely above a whisper. Meeting like this. It puts everything I've worked for at risk. Naya remained composed. We're living in irregular times. Helen smoothed her jacket sleeves, an old habit from her early corporate days. At 52, she had endured decades of barriers. She'd survived by compromising, by choosing her battles. But even she had limits. I assume this is about Elijah Brandt. No, Naya corrected. It's about Virion Airlines and the rot buried in its foundations. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Helen's face didn't flinch, but her eyes narrowed. I'm the COO, Ms. Bennett. Why would I help you tear my company down? Because you've tried to fix it from the inside and been blocked every step of the way. Naya replied. You reported safety concerns, discrimination claims, accounting irregularities, all silenced. Helen blinked. How do you know that? We have our sources. There was a pause. The city stretched silently behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. When the storm hits, and it will, people will look for someone to lead. Be ready. Helen remained silent, then asked, What do you want me to do? Nothing, not yet, but when the time comes, step forward. Naya stood and left, her phone already buzzing. A secure message lit up her screen. Banking records confirmed. Langford authorized direct transfers to shell accounts in the Caymans. Back in her office overlooking the bay, Selena Price reviewed a glowing tablet handed back to Elijah Brandt. It's all connected, Elijah said. The bank that denied my first business loan owns a chunk of Virion stock. The same board members who mocked my scholarship at MIT are on their advisory panel. Selena studied the web of names, corporations, and silent alliances. You've been tracking this? For years, Elijah replied simply. Information is leverage. I learned that early. She handed the tablet back slowly. What happened to the boy who wanted to use algorithms to predict food shortages and save the world? Elijah looked out at the water. He grew up. He realized good intentions aren't enough. You need leverage to move the system. And now you have it. He nodded. Now I have it. Selena's expression softened. Be careful. When you fight monsters long enough, make sure you don't become one. He didn't answer, but her words stayed with him. As Elijah stepped into the elevator, his phone rang. Naya's voice was tense. We've got a problem. Go on. Graham Voss is targeting our internal contacts. Malik Owens and Desmond Hale are both under pressure. Voss is threatening exposure, termination, legal threats. Elijah didn't break stride. Then it's time, he said. Activate countermeasures. No one stands alone. Understood, Naya replied. It's already in motion. Expected, Elijah Brandt said calmly into his secure line. Activate countermeasures. Make sure they're protected. Already in progress, Naya Bennett responded without hesitation. At Virion headquarters, Graham Voss stood before a digital whiteboard, briefing Everett Langford with his signature cold precision. We've identified several likely sources of the leaks and are in the process of neutralizing them, he reported. More importantly, we've uncovered something potentially useful on Elijah Brandt. Langford straightened, suddenly alert. What kind of something? An old sexual harassment complaint from a former employee, Voss replied. It was quietly settled 3 years ago. No formal charges. Langford's face lit with dark satisfaction. Perfect, he said. Leak it. Let's see how Brandt likes playing defense for once. Voss hesitated. Sir, I'd advise confirming the legitimacy first. I don't care, Langford snapped. Leak it, now. Within hours, a poorly sourced story surfaced on a fringe gossip blog. Tech mogul Elijah Brandt accused of misconduct in company cover-up. The headlines weren't subtle, the accusations vague, but they had just enough venom to go viral. Until they didn't. What happened next stunned even seasoned media analysts. The very site that published the hit piece issued a full retraction within the hour, accompanied by a public apology. Attached were damning leaked emails, revealing that Graham Voss himself had paid for the story and pressured the editor to run it unverified. The retraction set off a cascade of consequences. That same morning, major news networks launched their own exposés. This time, the target was Virion Airlines. CNN broke the first wave. Breaking. CEO Everett Langford under investigation for financial irregularities. Documents link Langford to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. MSNBC followed. Whistleblowers allege toxic culture and systemic discrimination at Virion Airlines. Then, the Wall Street Journal, SEC launches probe into Virion following leaked internal documents. Langford stared at his office television, slack-jawed, as headline after headline filled the screen. The chaos was instant. His phone rang. It was the chairman of the board. "What the hell is going on, Everett?" Langford barely managed to speak. "It's Brandt. He's orchestrating this. I don't care if it's the ghost of Steve Jobs," the chairman thundered. "Fix it, or we will." Just as Langford hung up, his computer screen flickered, then changed entirely. A video call connected automatically, and there he was, Elijah Brandt, staring back at him with a calm that felt like a hammer just before the strike. "Hello, Everett," Elijah said evenly. Langford lurched backward. How are you on my secure line?" "There's nothing secure about Virion Systems anymore," Elijah said, his tone almost casual. "Not since you let rot define your company." Langford's voice quivered. "What do you want? Money? An apology?" Elijah nearly smiled. "I have more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime, Everett, and your apology would be as meaningless as your values." Langford's expression hardened. "Then what is this? Revenge?" "No," Elijah replied. "Justice, accountability, change." He leaned forward slightly. "You're not just fighting me, Everett. You're fighting the future." The call ended abruptly, leaving Langford stunned. As he scrambled to call Voss, the only message on his screen read, "We're not shutting down a flight. We're shutting down an empire." Across the bay at Brandt Systems HQ in Pacific Heights, the mood was very different. In a sleek, glass-walled conference room with a panoramic view of the Golden Gate Bridge, Elijah's legal team gathered with laser-sharp focus. Rebecca Lynn, Elijah's chief counsel, stood at the head of the table in a navy blue suit that matched her demeanor. Precise, no nonsense, and unshakable. "The formal complaint has been submitted to Virion Airlines," she announced. "We've alleged racial discrimination, creation of a hostile travel environment, and violations of federal transportation equality statutes." Elijah, seated at the table, nodded thoughtfully, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "And their response?" he asked. "They're scrambling," Rebecca said with the faintest smile. "They've requested a 48-hour extension to issue an official statement." "Granted," Elijah replied. "The letter's just a distraction anyway." Near the window, Nia Bennett gave her own update. "Phase 2 is progressing exactly as planned. We've assembled a core team of 20 specialists, cybersecurity experts, former investigative reporters, forensic accountants. We're coordinating exposure across multiple fronts." Elijah rose and walked to the digital smart wall, where dozens of data nodes pulsed and connected, each a thread in the complex web that held Virion's empire together. He tapped on one node, and a full view of Virion's corporate structure expanded. Overlapping shell companies, secret offshore accounts, proxy-owned subsidiaries, and questionable political donors. This entire empire, he said, is built on sand, hollowed out by greed, held together by fear, by threats, and by legal manipulation. Rebecca joined him. The SEC is already reviewing the first batch of files. Quietly, but they're hesitant. Langford has deep ties in Washington. Politics, Elijah muttered, his voice colder now. The last refuge of cowards in power. He turned to the room, his eyes meeting each member of his team. This isn't about a single insult or a single flight. This is about systems. She's not the disease, Elijah Brandt said quietly, the city lights of San Francisco glowing behind him. She's a symptom. Nia Bennett, standing by the large digital wall of interconnected data, didn't flinch as she added, "Our investigation found 12 prior formal complaints against Tessa Granger, all for discriminatory treatment of passengers, all buried by Virion's HR." Elijah didn't look surprised. "And what about Mira?" "She's under pressure," Nia confirmed. "Graham Voss has been floating vague threats about her future. No direct orders, but the implications there. Stay quiet, or your career is over." A rare flicker of emotion passed across Elijah's face. His jaw tensed, a subtle yet unmistakable signal. "Make sure she's protected," he said. "Same for Malik and Director Quinn." As the room cleared and his team began executing their next steps, Elijah's phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn Carter. "Langford's reaching out to his contacts. Senator Brooks just called asking questions about you. Be careful." Across the country, at Virion's ISU headquarters, the boardroom was in disarray. William Carter, one of the senior board members, pounded the table. "This is spiraling out of control. We need to settle with Brandt. Issue a public apology. Try to salvage what's left." "Absolutely not," Everett Langford barked back, red-faced. "We show weakness now, and we'll have every discrimination lawyer in the country crawling through our files." He swept the room with a defiant glare. "This is a shakedown, plain and simple." Helen Vance sat silently, observing. The COO had spent a decade watching Langford trade ethics for profit. He was always careful, always shielded by layers of deniability. But now, with mounting scrutiny, those shields were cracking, and everyone in the room could feel it. "Our stock has dropped 18% in 3 days, said CFO Marcus Glenn. "Institutional investors are starting to panic." "We'll contain it," Langford insisted. "Graham Voss has dealt with worse. Elijah Brandt has deep roots in tech, Everett," Helen said, finally breaking her silence. "And if the allegations of fraud and discrimination turn out to be true, what then?" A heavy pause fell across the room. Langford turned to her with ice in his gaze. "Those allegations are fabricated. I'm shocked you'd even suggest otherwise." Helen didn't back down. "I'm considering every scenario. That's my job." Just then, Langford's assistant rushed in, slipping a printed message into his hand. As he read it, the color drained from his face. "What is it?" William asked. Langford's voice was tight. "Brandt Systems just posted a statement online. It reads, 'Sometimes giants must fall.' It's already been shared over 50,000 times. Meanwhile, in his small studio apartment, Malik Carter sat in front of his laptop, heart pounding. After his run-in with Voss, he'd called in sick, blaming food poisoning. The truth? He didn't know if he still had a job. His phone rang. "Hello?" he asked warily. "Malik Carter?" A calm but firm woman's voice replied, "This is Nia Bennett, Chief of Global Security at Brandt Systems. We need to talk." Malik's pulse quickened. "How did you get my number? That's not important right now. What matters is your safety," Nia said. "Graham Voss has placed you under surveillance. There's a black sedan across from your building." Malik hurried to the window. Sure enough, a dark car with tinted windows idled across the street. "What do they want from me?" he whispered. "I'm just an intern." "You're a witness, Malik," Nia said softly. And in Voss's world, witnesses are either controlled or eliminated. A cold shiver traveled down his spine. "So, what now?" he asked. "You have a choice," Nia replied. "Stay silent and hope they forget you exist, or help us expose the truth. Either way, we'll protect you." Across the city, Director Vincent Quinn boxed up his personal belongings. After refusing to comply with Voss's intimidation tactics, he'd been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Corporate speak for being pushed out quietly. His commendations from military service, photos from 20 years of public safety work, and small mementos of a principled career now sat in a cardboard box. His secure phone, not the one provided by Virion, buzzed with a text, "East parking lot, black Tesla. Driver is trusted." Quinn looked around one last time, took the box, and left. 20 minutes later, he entered a discreet, unmarked office building on the edge of downtown. Elijah Brandt stood as he entered, extending a hand. "Director Quinn, thank you for coming." Vincent took it, firm. "Not like I had much of a choice. My career's over. Or just beginning," Elijah said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "It depends on your perspective." Quinn studied the man before him. Steady, composed, strategic. "What do you want from me, Mr. Brandt?" "Only the truth," Elijah replied. Vincent Quinn sat across from Elijah Brandt, the glow of the overhead lights reflecting off the polished table between them. Elijah, calm and composed as ever, exuded quiet authority. "I've seen the rot inside Virion for years," Quinn admitted finally. "It's not just how they treat passengers. There's discrimination baked into every layer of the operation. Biased protocols, complaints that vanish, whistleblowers quietly pushed out." Elijah nodded once. "We've uncovered the same. But testimony from someone in your position would speak volumes." "You're asking me to become a whistleblower?" Vincent asked, his voice low but steady. "I'm asking you to be the man I believe you already are," Elijah replied. "Someone who still believes in doing what's right, even when it's the hard thing." Across the city, in a dark-paneled conference room inside Virion's makeshift crisis headquarters, Graham Voss was flipping through thick dossiers labeled with Elijah Brandt's name. "Sir," one of his assistants interrupted, holding out a folder. "We may have found something." Voss looked up sharply. "What is it?" When Brandt launched his first company, it was essentially stolen from him. Venture capitalists at Crest Hill Equity forced him out and rebranded the tech under their own umbrella. The lead partner on that deal? Bradley Crest, now a senior advisor here at Virion, and he's the one who introduced Langford to key political donors. Voss's eyes narrowed. "So this isn't just about the airport. This is personal for Brandt. It appears so." "Dig deeper," Voss ordered. "I want the full story. We need leverage." While Voss worked his angles, Nia Bennett was quietly finishing her own, far more damning investigation. She stared at the secured digital vault on her screen, an archive of Virion's darkest secrets. Falsified maintenance logs, harassment settlements hidden behind NDA walls, fraudulent expense reports, and, most disturbingly, documents linking a subsidiary charter wing to trafficking activity, including incomplete passenger manifests and matching bank transfers. This isn't just corporate misconduct, she told Elijah in their encrypted briefing. We're talking federal crimes, possibly international. Elijah's expression stayed calm, but his eyes sharpened. Do we have proof? Flight logs, wire transfers, passenger names that don't exist in TSA databases. It's enough to open multiple investigations. Proceed, but carefully, Elijah instructed. We need to be surgical. Innocent employees must be protected at all costs. That evening, Tessa Granger, once confident, now rattled, pulled into her driveway only to be blinded by flashing cameras. Paparazzi shouted her name. She rushed inside and slammed the door, heart pounding. Her phone buzzed with nonstop alerts, voicemails, messages, notifications. One stood out, a text from a former colleague with a link. She tapped it and watched, horrified, as a compilation of surveillance clips played out. Each video showed her interactions with passengers over the past year. The pattern was unmistakable. Rude tones reserved for passengers of color, escalations with no cause, smiles and polite language saved only for those who looked right. Who leaked this? She whispered aloud, panic rising. She immediately dialed Langford's office, but was routed to Graham Voss. This is a violation of my privacy, she barked the moment he answered. The company needs to protect me. We're managing a full-scale crisis, Voss said coldly. You are not our priority. I followed protocol, she insisted. Everyone knows we're supposed to be more observant with certain passengers in premium. I would advise you not to repeat that, Voss warned. It could be construed as defamatory. The call ended. Alone in her kitchen, Tessa realized what was happening. She wasn't being protected, she was being sacrificed. That same night, Elijah sat in his quiet hotel suite watching old footage. A flickering image of his 12-year-old self on a foster home step. Coding late at night, rejection letters, his first betrayal in business. He watched it all, not for nostalgia, but for clarity. He had survived it all. And now, it was time. His phone buzzed with a secure message from Naya. Assets acquired. Ready for full-spectrum takedown. Elijah walked to the window, staring down at the pulsing lights of the city. Let the empire crumble, he whispered. At 4:13 a.m. Eastern, something snapped. Virion's entire global booking system crashed. Kiosks flashed red with system errors. Backup servers failed to initialize. Manual override codes didn't respond. By 6 a.m., chaos reigned in every major airport in the country. Gate agents shouted apologies they couldn't explain. TSA reverted to manual screening, causing security lines to snake through terminals. Digital manifests disappeared. First-class passengers were told they had no seats. The media descended with cameras rolling. Social feeds exploded. Everett Langford was jolted awake by a barrage of calls. What do you mean, system failure? He shouted into his phone. It's total, the CTO replied, breathless. Front end, back end, internal systems. Everything's compromised. We have redundancies. They were breached simultaneously. This wasn't a failure. It was surgical. Someone knew exactly where to strike. By late morning, every major news network was broadcasting the meltdown live. Reporters at airports, stranded travelers, screaming headlines, Virion Airways collapses under cyber attack. CEO Langford silent as passengers riot in terminals. SEC confirms multiple ongoing investigations. On Wall Street, Virion's stock price dropped 20% in a single morning. Trading bots panicked. Institutional investors fled. But it wasn't over yet. The system collapse was only the beginning. At exactly 9 a.m. Eastern, a carefully orchestrated information assault began. Multiple platforms, news outlets, watchdog sites, and government portals simultaneously released damaging reports about Virion Air. The Washington Sentinel, one of the country's most respected newspapers, published an explosive exposé titled 30 Years of Shadows, Corruption Inside Virion Air. It included internal documents, board meeting transcripts, and statements from protected whistleblowers. Minutes later, a whistleblower disclosure appeared on the Securities and Exchange Commission's website. It detailed financial fraud, misappropriated funds, and a deliberate pattern of ignoring safety concerns. The submission was backed by authentic transaction records and board minutes that confirmed decisions to suppress warnings from engineers. Then came CNN breaking news. We've just received confirmation that the FBI is officially reviewing claims that Virion's CEO, Everett Langford, kept dual financial ledgers, one for investors, another for federal regulators, and, perhaps most damning of all, evidence suggests the company falsified flight safety records. Inside the crisis room at Virion headquarters, Langford stood surrounded by his legal team, frozen as the anchor read the report aloud. "This isn't just a cyber attack," muttered Mason Kearns, Virion's CFO. "This is coordinated warfare." "Where the hell is Graham Voss?" Langford demanded, eyes wild. "He's trying to control the narrative," Mason said, "but at this point, it's like trying to hold back a flood with a garden hose." Langford's phone rang. Senator Gardner. "Turn on Global News," the senator barked before hanging up. Langford scrambled with the remote. On screen stood Senator James Wheeler, flanked by Nia Bennett. "These allegations, if proven true," Wheeler said gravely, "would represent one of the most catastrophic violations of public trust in aviation history. My office is launching a formal investigation effective immediately." Langford slammed the remote down. "That backstabbing—" Mason interrupted, pale. "The board just called an emergency session. They want you in the conference room. 30 minutes. Across town, Vincent Quinn sat under bright studio lights, giving a live interview on national television. His calm, military bearing lent weight to every word. "This wasn't an isolated incident," Vincent said. "Discrimination was systemic. When I submitted internal reports, they disappeared. The episode with Mr. Brandt was simply the part the public got to see. There's a whole iceberg beneath it." Meanwhile, Jamal Avery appeared on another network, his voice steady despite the anxiety behind his eyes. His honesty and heart made him an instant hero online. "I watched a man who built some of the systems powering this airport get treated like a criminal. Why? Because they assumed someone who looked like him didn't belong in first class. When I tried to speak up, they threatened me. They tried to silence me." By midday, the hashtag Virion Reckoning was trending globally. In Virion's executive suite, the fall of Tessa Granger was swift and very public. Security escorted her from the building as journalists snapped photos from across the street. "This is unjust," she shouted. "I was following implied policy. Everyone knew we were supposed to apply extra scrutiny to certain passengers in premium." Before leaving, she stormed into the break room where Erica Lim sat quietly sipping tea. "You did this," Tessa hissed. "You leaked those surveillance videos. "I did what was right," Erica replied. "What you did to Mr. Brandt and countless others, that was always wrong." "You've destroyed my career," Tessa snapped. "No," Erica said, meeting her gaze. "You did that every time you chose discrimination over dignity." Elsewhere, Helen Voss was seated at her desk when her private line rang. It was Nia Bennett. "It's time," Nia said. "The board needs leadership. They're looking for someone clean, someone unconnected to Langford's corruption." "And you think they'll turn to me?" Helen asked. "We've made sure they know," Nia said simply. "Your emails raising concerns about safety, your pushback on unethical directives, those have been quietly shared with the right people." Helen closed her eyes for a long breath. "And if I step into the chaos?" she asked. "Elijah Brandt is open to rebuilding under ethical leadership. That conversation begins with you." Back at Virion headquarters, the boardroom was boiling over. "This is a smear campaign," Langford insisted. "A hostile corporate hit job orchestrated by Brandt using his technology and influence." "The question isn't who's attacking us," said William Hawthorne, one of the longest-serving board members. "It's whether the allegations are true." Langford flushed. "Of course not." "Then explain the offshore accounts," Hawthorne pressed. "Explain the secret financial ledgers. Did you sign off on those?" Langford opened his mouth, but no answer came. Outside, protesters had begun to gather at Virion headquarters, holding signs reading "Justice for Brandt," "No more flying while black," and "Passengers, not profits." Back in his hotel suite, Elijah Brandt watched the avalanche unfold on screen. He wasn't smiling, but his expression held a quiet resolve. His phone buzzed. A text from Nia. "Public tide is shifting. Full-scale investigations incoming. Federal attention confirmed." Moments later, another call came, this time from Helen Voss. "I've spoken to the board," she said. "They're considering a leadership transition. If that happens, I want to do this right." Elijah didn't hesitate. "You'll have our support." The moment came crashing down harder than Everett Langford ever imagined. As the Virion Airways Board of Directors prepared to vote on his immediate suspension, his assistant burst into the conference room, pale and breathless, holding a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." On the screen was an email, sent from Everett's personal account to Bradley Winston, a senior advisor and former venture capitalist. The contents were damning. Explicit instructions to suppress safety concerns on the 737 fleet and strategies for silencing whistleblowers within the maintenance division. The blood drained from Langford's face. That has been doctored. It's been authenticated," said William Hawthorne, a senior board member. "Digital forensics will verify the signature chain. This isn't fabricated, Everett. It's just finally come to light." "If even half of this is true," another board member added grimly, "we're not just facing lawsuits, we're staring down criminal indictments." As the vote began, an overwhelming decision to suspend Langford effective immediately, on the other side of the country, Elijah Brandt met with the board of his own company. "Virion's stock has lost 47% in a single trading day," said his CFO. "Their market cap is spiraling. They're teetering on the edge." "Good," muttered one board member. "They deserve to fall after what they did." "No company deserves to fail if it employs thousands of innocent people," Elijah countered calmly. "Virion employs over 28,000 workers nationwide. Most of them had nothing to do with its leadership's corruption or discriminatory policies." "So, what are you proposing?" asked the CFO. Elijah's lips curved in a subtle smile. I'm suggesting that Virion may soon be available at a very attractive price. That evening, as federal agents began seizing documents from Virion offices across the country, Elijah joined a private conference call with a group of minority shareholders, those who had long expressed quiet unease about Langford's leadership. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elijah began, his tone measured, "we now find ourselves in possession of a unique opportunity. We can help salvage what's still good about Virion Airways. Some might say your interest is vindictive," one investor said cautiously, "given what's happened." "On the contrary," Elijah replied, "I see opportunity where others only see ruin. Virion has valuable infrastructure. Its roots, landing rights, skilled workforce. What it's lacked is vision, integrity, and competent leadership." "You're talking about a hostile takeover," another investor said. "I'm talking about transformation," Elijah corrected. "At today's stock value, Brandt Technologies could acquire a controlling stake for just 30% of what it would have cost a week ago." "That sounds predatory," one investor objected. "That's business," another shot back. "And frankly, it might be the only thing keeping the company from collapse." Elijah allowed the discussion to swirl before he spoke again. "My offer is simple. Brandt Technologies will purchase controlling shares at a 50% premium over the current market price. It's a bargain for us, and a lifeline for you." "And what's to stop you from dismantling it?" someone asked. "Breaking the company apart and selling off the assets?" "There will be a binding agreement," Elijah answered. "We will maintain current employment levels for at least 2 years and invest heavily in infrastructure and culture modernization." Meanwhile, Erica Lim was meeting with Nia Bennett at a quiet cafe. "Tessa Granger just filed a wrongful termination suit," Nia informed her. "She claimed she was following unofficial company policy when profiling passengers." Erica exhaled. "So I'll need to testify." "Most likely," Nia nodded. "But you won't be alone. We have documentation from 12 other incidents involving Granger. You're part of something bigger now." "What's next for Virion?" Erica asked. "That depends," Nia replied. "But I can tell you this. Elijah Brandt isn't interested in revenge. He's interested in accountability and reform." Erica nodded slowly. "That's why I risked everything to speak up. Some things matter more than a paycheck." That night, Everett Langford sat alone in his office as security officers arrived to escort him out. Before they entered, his tablet lit up with a video call request. Elijah Brandt. Against his lawyer's advice, Langford accepted. "Here to gloat?" Everett sneered. "No," Elijah replied calmly. "I'm here to offer you perspective." Everett laughed bitterly. "You've destroyed everything I built." "You destroyed it yourself," Elijah said. "I merely exposed the truth. This isn't over." "It is." "For you," Elijah said, voice steady. "But not for the 28,000 people who counted on your leadership. They deserve better." "What are you saying?" Everett asked, voice tightening. "I'm saying," Elijah replied, "that tomorrow morning I'll meet with your board to discuss Brandt Technologies acquiring controlling interest in Virion Airways. A new chapter begins now." The call ended. Langford sat frozen. Outside, the San Francisco skyline glittered, calm and cold. Elijah's phone buzzed. A message from Nia. "Federal agents just served a warrant at Langford's residence. It's in motion." Elijah looked out over the city, quiet. Then he whispered, "Let the empire crumble, but this time so we can rebuild something better. Everett Langford's private jet touched down at Bayview International beneath a sky cloaked in charcoal clouds. The rain had held off, barely, but the tension in the air felt thick, almost deliberate, like nature itself was aware of the reckoning underway. 3 days had passed since his suspension as CEO of Virion Airways, and in that time the company's stock had collapsed further. His personal accounts were frozen by the SEC, and the media painted him with headlines he couldn't outrun. This meeting with Elijah Brandt hadn't been his idea. The Virion board, desperate for any path to survival, had all but begged him to make a last-ditch appeal. Everett agreed, not from loyalty, but because playing the cooperative scapegoat might help soften his legal exposure. His car pulled up to Brandt Technologies' headquarters, a striking tower of glass and stone rising cleanly above the city. It was nothing like the marble and gold arrogance of Virion's Atlanta compound. The structure radiated quiet strength, not ostentation. Everett stepped out into the wind and rain mist and nodded to his driver. "Wait here. This won't take long." Inside, a guard at the minimalist reception desk looked up. "Mr. Langford, please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Everett checked his watch. Precisely 10 a.m., just as scheduled. He declined coffee. He didn't want to be comfortable. He wanted to be in control. By 10:45, he returned to the desk. "Excuse me. I had a 10 o'clock meeting with Mr. Brandt." "Yes, sir. Mr. Brandt is aware you're here. Please remain seated." His face flushed. He turned sharply, muttering under his breath. By 11:30, he was pacing. By noon, Everett snapped. "This is unacceptable. I'm not some regional sales rep here to pitch an idea. I'm a CEO." "Former CEO," came a voice from behind him. He turned to find Nia Bennett watching him with professional detachment. "Mr. Brandt will see you now." Without waiting for a reply, she turned and led him to the elevators. Everett followed, his pride limping behind him. "Is this how he runs a company?" Everett asked as they ascended, "leaving people to wait hours like that?" Nia didn't turn. "Mr. Brandt's time is exceptionally valuable. Yours is becoming less so." The elevator doors opened directly into a private floor. There, facing the city skyline, Elijah Brandt stood in front of tall glass windows, his hands folded behind his back. "Mr. Brandt," Everett began, summoning false warmth, "I appreciate you making the time. I think we can find a way forward that benefits everyone." Elijah turned slowly. "Please, sit down, Everett." The familiarity in his tone, the effortless dominance, it stung. But Everett sat. "Let's cut to it," Everett said. "You've made your point. You've hurt our valuation, embarrassed our leadership. You got your revenge for that incident. Fine. Now let's move past this." Elijah watched him in silence. "Do you really believe this is about revenge for a single airport incident?" Everett scoffed. "Come on, let's not pretend this is some moral crusade. One of our employees stepped out of line. We terminated her. I'm here offering a personal apology. What more do you want?" "Accountability," Elijah said. "Not for incidents, for systems, not for people, for patterns." Everett waved dismissively. "Don't give me that social justice rhetoric. We both know this is business. You're leveraging this moment. So, name your price." Elijah pressed a button on his desk. A holographic interface flickered to life between them, displaying a web of internal documents, emails, audit trails, payroll discrepancies. Sections of the Virion corporate structure were highlighted in red: fraud, abuse, discrimination, falsified records. "I'll show you what my team uncovered," Elijah said. 6 years of falsified maintenance data, 12 harassment settlements buried with NDAs, hiring practices filtered by bias, and more. Money laundering via your charter subsidiary. Everett went pale. These are internal files, he snapped. You've hacked us. This is corporate espionage. Interesting, Elijah replied smoothly. You're more concerned with how the truth was found than what it reveals. He zoomed in on one email. Recognize your signature? Everett stared, unable to deny it. You used your power not to build, but to bury, Elijah said. You ran a company like it was your kingdom. The rest of us, we were the peasants who got too close to the throne. You've made your point, Everett muttered, deflating. So what now? Do you take the company apart? No, Elijah said softly. I rebuild it. Everett looked up, surprised. You still want Virayon? I never wanted to destroy Virayon, Elijah said. I wanted to change it. The people who work there deserve better. The passengers, too. Everett let out a bitter laugh. You think you'll be hailed as a savior? No, Elijah replied, standing. I think the system will resist me at every turn. But I also think truth changes things. Eventually. The elevator doors opened behind them. Nya stood waiting. Everett rose slowly, shoulders hunched under invisible weight. Elijah, he said with one last trace of arrogance, this isn't over. It is for you, Elijah said, not unkindly. But for Virayon, it's just beginning. That night, as federal agents raided Everett's estate, Elijah Brandt stood on the rooftop of Brandt Technologies, the skyline glittering around him. His phone buzzed. Message from Naya. Board vote passed. Virayon accepts acquisition terms. You're in. Another buzz. Message from Erica Lim. Thank you for everything. He looked out at the horizon. Let the empire crumble, Elijah whispered, and in its place. He smiled, finishing the sentence only in his heart. We'll build something better. Your concern is with how we obtain the evidence, Elijah Brandt said, his voice calm but firm, not with the crimes that evidence reveals. Across the desk, Everett Langford sat, his usual swagger drained away. His fingers tightened around the armrests of his chair. What do you want? He asked, voice raw. I want Virayon Airways, Elijah stated plainly. Brandt Technologies will acquire controlling interest at $20 per share. Everett let out a bitter, humorless laugh. That's less than a third of what it was trading at a week ago. And it's more than twice what it's worth now, Elijah replied evenly. It's also significantly more than it will be worth once the indictments drop. Everett stared across the desk, searching for leverage, for weakness, for anything he could twist to regain control. Finding none, he tried a new tactic. If I help facilitate the acquisition, he said slowly, what's in it for me? Personally? The possibility, Elijah said without blinking, of avoiding federal prison. Everett blinked. I have enough to ensure you spend the next decade behind bars, but cooperate fully with the transition. Sign a full confession outlining your role in Virayon's misconduct, and I'll make sure that confession emphasizes your cooperation. You want me to confess? Everett's voice was incredulous. To destroy myself? No, Elijah said. I want you to recognize reality. Your empire's already gone. The only thing left to decide is whether you go down with it. Everett shot to his feet, chair screeching backward. This meeting is over. My attorneys will be in touch. You haven't heard the last of this, Brandt. He turned to storm out. Actually, Elijah said calmly, I've arranged a ride for your next appointment with the FBI. Everett froze mid-step. "They're eager to discuss your offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands." The elevator doors slid open, revealing 2 federal agents in dark suits. "Mr. Langford," one said, "you'll need to come with us." Everett turned slowly, face ashen. You wouldn't." "I already did," Elijah replied. The agents escorted him out without a word. As the doors closed behind them, Nia Bennett stepped into the room from a side entrance. "That went exactly as expected," she said, scrolling through a secure tablet. "Men like Langford always assume they're the smartest person in the room," Elijah replied, "right up until they're not." Nia's expression shifted. "Speaking of strategy, our sources confirm Everett instructed Ethan Ross to create a fake scandal about you. Financial improprieties tied to diversity contracts." Elijah didn't even flinch. "And?" he asked. "We intercepted it before the story went live, and we traced the forged documents straight back to Ross's laptop. The FBI now has their fraud on file." "Perfect," Elijah nodded. "What about the board? Helen Voss has been making quiet moves. With Everett out of the way, she's rallying enough support. I expect they'll vote on our acquisition offer within 24 hours. Across the city, in a humble conference room at the Brandt Technologies Recruitment Center, Jamal Avery sat nervously at a long table. He'd received a vague invitation to discuss your future, but hadn't expected anything like this. When the door opened, he stood instinctively, then nearly fell backward when Elijah Brandt himself walked in. "Mr. Brandt, I thought, sit down, Jamal," Elijah said, smiling warmly, "and please, call me Elijah." Still stunned, Jamal sat. I don't understand why I'm here." "You're here," Elijah said, taking a seat across from him, "because when it mattered, you did the right thing. You stood up when others looked away. That kind of courage? It's rare. I just did what anyone would have done," Jamal said quietly. "No," Elijah said, shaking his head. "Most people stay silent. You didn't." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer letter, a full-time position, in Brandt Technologies' Leadership Development Program. The salary made Jamal's hands tremble. "I'm not qualified for something like this," Jamal said. "Skills can be learned," Elijah replied, "but character is earned, and you've already proven yours." Jamal blinked, overwhelmed. "We rise, not just for ourselves," Elijah continued, "but so others don't have to start where we did. Someone took a chance on me once. It's time to pay that forward." Back at Virion headquarters, Erica Lim was escorted into an executive suite she'd never stepped foot in before. At the end of a sleek desk sat Helen Voss, composed and warm. "Thank you for coming, Erica," Helen said. "Please, sit." Am I in trouble?" Helen smiled. "Quite the opposite. I wanted to thank you for your integrity. You didn't just report wrongdoing. You stood up for what was right. I only did what anyone would have done." "No," Helen said, her voice soft. "You did what most people are too scared to do." She stood and stepped around the desk. "Regalis is changing," Helen said, "and we're going to need leaders with conscience, not just credentials." Erica's eyes widened. "You mean—" "I mean," Helen said, handing her a new contract, "I'd like you to help rebuild this company from the inside." Erica stared at the offer in disbelief. "I don't know what to say." "Then start with yes," Helen said. Meanwhile, Ethan Ross was spiraling. The fake scandal he'd created had backfired. Federal agents now had his fabricated documents, and his name was already being whispered in connection to conspiracy charges. "Cut your losses," his lawyer told him over the phone. Or you'll be next. But Ethan didn't believe in losses. Not yet. He pulled up a file marked Brandt, personal. He was desperate now, and desperate men made mistakes. "I've been asked to help build a new corporate ethics division," said Helen Voss, her voice steady but warm. "And this one, it'll have actual power, real authority to confront discrimination and misconduct, not just file it away." Across from her, Erica Lim blinked in disbelief. "You want me on that team?" Helen smiled. "You stood up when it counted, Erica. You recognized what was wrong and chose to act. That's the kind of leadership we need right now. Not just titles, but values." Erica's eyes widened. "But I'm just a gate agent." "No," Helen cut in gently. "You're someone who knows right from wrong and won't look away. And that's exactly who we need to rebuild this airline from the ground up." Elsewhere, Tessa Granger sat in the sterile office of her legal counsel, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. Her attorney scrolled through a growing digital folder. "We'll argue you were following implicit company policy," he said. "Unwritten, yes, but understood. Executed by others. That you're being scapegoated to shield higher-level leadership." Tessa nodded eagerly. "Exactly. I wasn't freelancing. I was doing what was expected." Her attorney hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "There's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Regalis. Well, Virion Airways now. They've sent documentation ahead of our filing. Multiple passenger complaints, performance reviews, and a rather damning video compilation. Patterns of behavior, escalations, disparities in how you treated passengers of color." Tessa bristled. "That's out of context." "Maybe, but they've also filed a counterclaim, arguing your actions cost the company millions in reputation and business." Her face dropped. They can't do that. I was loyal. 15 years. They can. And from what I'm seeing," he added grimly, "they might win. If we proceed, you could be personally liable for damages." Tessa stared blankly at the screen, the foundation of her defense crumbling beneath her. Back at Virion's headquarters, the boardroom buzzed with tension. The directors were split. Some clung to the past, others looked nervously toward the future. "This is corporate robbery," one board member growled. "Brandt has taken advantage of us while we're bleeding." "No," countered William Freeman, voice calm. "We created the vulnerability. What Brandt is offering is rescue, not theft. And unlike the market, he's committing to preserve jobs. How do we know we can trust him?" From her seat, Helen answered. "Elijah Brandt built a multi-billion-dollar company by prioritizing innovation and inclusion. His record speaks for itself. Can we say the same about our leadership under Everett?" The room quieted. No one could. After hours of heated discussion, the vote was cast. 11-3, in favor of Brandt Technologies acquiring Virion Airways. The news exploded across headlines. "Unprecedented move. Tech giant Brandt Technologies acquires major airline." "Revolution in the skies. Elijah Brandt reshapes aviation with bold merger." On CNBC, a senior analyst offered perspective. "We've never seen anything like this. A tech CEO with zero background in aviation is now steering one of the country's largest airlines, and the industry is watching closely." In a federal holding facility, Everett Langford seethed as his attorney relayed the news. The board approved the acquisition. Everett's jaw clenched. "That bastard." "Everett," his lawyer cut in, "you need to focus. The prosecutors are offering a deal, but it's conditional. Full cooperation, full disclosure." "I'll never cooperate with them," Everett snapped. "You might want to rethink that," the attorney replied bluntly, "because right now you're staring down the barrel of 20 years in federal prison. Is that really worth protecting your pride?" Back at Brandt Technologies, Elijah met with his leadership team. "The integration will be complex," warned his CFO. "Culturally, Virion is, well, nothing like us." "That's why we're doing this," Elijah said. "Not just to expand, but to transform an industry that desperately needs it." "About the name," asked the CMO. "Do we keep Virion?" Elijah shook his head. "No. That name stands for the very system we're replacing. We need something new, a symbol of change." "Brandt Air has a clean sound," the CMO suggested. Elijah considered it, then nodded slowly. "Brandt Air," he echoed, "where everyone belongs." 3 months later, the transformation was nearly complete. What had once been Virion Airways was now Brandt Air, and it was already earning a reputation as the most inclusive, forward-thinking airline in the nation. And now, under the spring sun at Washington National Airport, the same terminal where Elijah had been humiliated not long ago, thousands gathered to witness a full-circle moment. A sleek Brandt Airjet, painted in navy and gold, stood proudly behind a temporary stage on the tarmac. Its new motto stretched along the fuselage in bold letters: "Brandt Air, where everyone belongs." Up front, seated in the crowd, Jamal Avery adjusted the lapel of his new Navy blazer. He was now a full-time management associate at Brandt Technologies. The salary had changed his life. But the mission? That's what really moved him. Beside him, Erica Lim wore her own ID badge, newly minted as Associate Director of Corporate Ethics. And standing just behind them, watching it all with quiet pride, was Vincent Quinn, now a senior advisor on airport security reform. The trio, once scattered in different corners of a broken system, were now helping build something better, something new. As Elijah took the stage, the applause surged. He raised a hand to quiet the crowd. 3 months ago, I stood in this very airport and was told I didn't belong here," he began. "But I knew then, and I know now I do. And so do all of you." He paused, letting the emotion in the air settle. Today isn't just about a new airline. It's about what happens when integrity meets action. When we stop accepting injustice as inevitable. When we build, not for profit alone, but for people. The applause returned, louder this time. "I didn't set out to own an airline," Elijah said with a smile, "but maybe it took an outsider to see what was broken, and maybe it takes all of us to fix it." The stage stood proudly against the backdrop of a gleaming new aircraft, its sleek design and elegant navy and gold logo representing a bold new identity: Brandt Air. As media crews jostled for space, Elijah Brandt stepped up to the podium. Though a man known for his quiet resolve, he radiated calm confidence in the spotlight. Today was more than a corporate rebranding. It was personal. "Today doesn't just mark the beginning of a new airline," Elijah began, his voice resonant and steady. "It marks a new vision for what air travel can and should be. Brandt Air is built on a simple promise that every person, every passenger, every employee deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." Applause rippled through the crowd. Our motto, "Where everyone belongs," isn't just a slogan. It's a standard. One we intend to meet in every flight, every interaction, every policy. Behind him, a diverse leadership team nodded in agreement. They weren't just there for show. They were the proof of a system transformed. Elijah continued outlining a series of groundbreaking initiatives: mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees, an anonymous reporting system for both staff and passengers, strategic partnerships with schools in underfunded communities, and a revolutionary travel scholarship program, free flights for low-income students visiting prospective colleges. We believe mobility, physical, economic, and social, isn't a luxury, Elijah said. It's a right, and we're building an airline that reflects that belief at every level. Seated in the front row, Jamal Avery blinked hard to contain emotion. Just 6 months ago, he'd been an overlooked intern at a crumbling company. Now he stood at the heart of a movement, and today he would tell his story. When Elijah introduced him, Jamal rose, adjusted his tie, and stepped forward with quiet determination. "My story begins with a simple act of recognition," he told the crowd. "I saw something wrong, and I chose not to stay silent. But this story isn't just about injustice," he added. "It's about potential, in ourselves, in each other, and even in the broken systems we inherit. An airline isn't just a business. It's a gateway to opportunity, to connection, to the wider world, and everyone deserves access to that." As Jamal spoke, cameras panned to the leadership team behind him. Erica Lim, now proudly serving as Director of Passenger Experience and Equity. Vincent Quinn, standing tall in his new role as Head of Security Operations. They were more than executives. They were survivors, allies, and changemakers. After the event, guests toured the newly refitted Brant Air jetliner, its interior redesigned for accessibility and comfort, with innovations ranging from wider aisles to sensory-friendly lighting. Meanwhile, Elijah stepped aside for a quiet moment with Helen Voss. "The board ratified your appointment as CEO this morning," he told her, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "Congratulations." Helen looked stunned. "A year ago, I was being passed over by Everett Langford at every turn. Now, I'm running the company." "You always were the right choice," Elijah replied. "Everett just couldn't see past his biases." She paused. "And you? What's next for Elijah Brant?" He smiled. "I have a few more systems to transform." Across town, Everett Langford stood before a federal judge, pale and hollow-eyed. He'd accepted a plea deal, 15 years reduced to 7, in exchange for full cooperation. The evidence against him was overwhelming. As marshals led him from the courtroom, a reporter called out, "Mr. Langford, any comment on today's Brant Air launch?" Everett turned, rage barely masked behind a tight expression. But he said nothing. He couldn't. Not anymore. That evening, headlines from every major outlet flooded the media. Brant Air takes off with a message. Equity in the skies. Disgraced CEO Everett Langford accepts plea deal amid expanding federal probe. Brant's vision for change could reshape aviation forever. At a quiet ceremony in San Francisco, Nia Bennett was officially promoted to Chief Operating Officer of Brant Technologies. "You've earned this," Elijah told her, presenting a symbolic key to the executive suite. "Your loyalty, your brilliance. You've led with integrity from the very start." "Justice doesn't always come quickly," Nia replied, her voice soft. "But it does come." 2 weeks later, Elijah's private jet touched down on the south side of Chicago, the place where his journey began. As he walked the neighborhood streets of his youth, memories crashed into him like waves. The foster homes, the bullying, the years of invisibility. He paused in front of his old elementary school, The building was worn, but still standing, much like the community itself. Inside the gymnasium, Principal Angela Williams welcomed him at the entrance. "Mr. Brandt, thank you for coming personally. The students are so excited." "The honor's mine," Elijah replied. "Is everything ready?" "Yes, though I still can't quite believe it's real." Hundreds of students had gathered in the assembly hall. The room buzzed with anticipation as Elijah took the stage. He glanced out at the young faces, some curious, some in awe. "I once sat where you are now," he said, voice steady. "Right in this very school, dreaming of a future that felt impossible." He paused, scanning the crowd. But dreams don't stay impossible if you fight for them. If you surround yourself with people who believe in something better. I'm not here today as a CEO. I'm here as proof that you belong. Everywhere. The room was silent for a beat, and then erupted in applause. Nothing is impossible when you combine talent with opportunity. That's how Elijah Brandt opened the announcement at his old elementary school on Chicago's South Side. Standing on the same worn gymnasium stage where he once listened to morning announcements as a quiet, overlooked child, Elijah now stood as a symbol of what was possible. He unveiled the Brandt Foundation's flagship initiative, a $50 million investment in the neighborhood. A state-of-the-art technology center equipped with AI labs, coding workshops, and design studios. A comprehensive mentorship network connecting students to professionals across healthcare, engineering, aviation, and tech. Full scholarships for higher education and career development programs. "This isn't charity," Elijah said, his voice warm but firm. "It's investment. In you, in your dreams, in our shared future." The gym erupted in cheers. Kids jumped to their feet, teachers clapped with pride, and even Dr. Angela Williams, the school's principal, blinked back tears. In that moment, Elijah felt something rare, something deeper than triumph. Grace. This, not revenge, not victory, but transformation, was the reason behind every risk he'd taken. Why he built Brandt Technologies. Why he took on Virion Airways. It was never about power. It was always about people. About changing the systems that had once nearly broken him. Later that evening, as his private jet prepared for takeoff, Elijah stared out over the city that had shaped him. His mind drifted to the past, back to those nights sitting on the foster home steps, notebook in hand, sketching equations to make sense of a chaotic world. He had been trying to predict patterns, hoping that if he understood the pain, he could prevent it. Now, all these years later, he had done just that. The patterns had changed, the equations had balanced, and he hadn't just changed his own life, he had changed the system. 3 days later, Elijah boarded the inaugural official flight of Brandt Air, a symbolic journey from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, the same route where he had once been humiliated. But this time, the experience was different. Everything had changed. The flight crew, diverse in ethnicity, background, and identity, welcomed each passenger with respect and professionalism. The cabin interior had been redesigned not just for luxury, but for accessibility, with thoughtful accommodations for passengers of all abilities. Every sign, every policy, every interaction reflected the airline's new core value, where everyone belongs. A smiling flight attendant approached with a glass of water. "Mr. Brandt, it's an honor to have you on board today." Elijah nodded, his smile genuine. "It's an honor to be here." As the aircraft taxied down the runway, he gazed out the window at the Brandt Air logo on the wing. two wings intertwining, a symbol of unity and elevation. The plane gathered speed, then lifted, soaring above the capital that once tried to contain him. From the sky, the city below looked small, its grids, patterns, and systems once insurmountable now laid bare beneath him. Elijah had not destroyed those systems. He had transformed them. He had rewritten the code, and in doing so, he had left a blueprint for others to follow. As the plane banked westward toward San Francisco, a rare moment of silence settled around him. He closed his eyes, not to rest, but to remember. The foster homes, the classrooms where he was underestimated, the conference rooms where he was ignored, the algorithms, the betrayal, the boy with the notebook trying to calculate hope. All of it had led here. What does true power look like? Is it the ability to destroy, or is it the wisdom to transform? Elijah Brandt's story is not about revenge. It's about justice, dignity, equity, and the relentless belief that a better world is possible, not someday, but now, a world where everyone belongs.